83. Primordial inhabitants of Australia, Aborigines, from a spiritual point of view. 12 May 1847. Original content summary. The original inhabitants of Australia, the largest island. They are pure natural beings. They are usually peaceful, have no fear of death nor of pain. Snake-eaters, abhorrence of clothed people. They are Cainites of the best kind, with vague knowledge of the prehistory of God. Magnificent bird world there. The philosophy of these people about it. Their food treatment of different types of meat. Their primordial style dwellings. Wise installation of these dwellings, etc. Half monarchic tribes there, especially in the north. Their sharp-smelling ability. The religion of these northern ones are more Chinese. These are, on the other hand, more difficult to bring to the truth than the first true Aborigines. The latter are masters of grass weaving. These are better off in the hereafter than many cultured Christian sects. In addition to these wild African tribes, there are also the same races in what you call the fifth part of the world, called Australia. This part of the world, or rather this largest island on the earth, has especially in its interior a considerable number of peoples to which almost no ray of human formation has yet reached. There are still, as you say, pure natural people, but they have nothing evil in themselves. They are exceedingly peaceful. They know nothing of war, although they don't fear death in the least. On the contrary, they often have a great longing for it. They can also endure physical pains with an indifference which is scarcely comprehensible to you. Therefore, they can bear the greatest hardships of life with the greatest equanimity. Battles with wild beasts are an entertaining game. They are also the greatest masters of serpents, and they always go out with the greatest desire for this catch, because these animals are the most delicious treats for them. When they see some strange newcomers somewhere, they usually take flight, less out of fear than from a sort of revulsion which they have for the clad Europeans, as well as Asians, for nothing is more disgusting and more annoying to them than a clothed man. They are also Cainites, but of the best kind, and have a vague concept of primordial times and of a supreme being. They do not worship the supreme being, however, but leave this to the birds in the air, which animal species is nowhere more beautiful and so rich than in this part of the world. These people say, God does not look for worship, but only for man's work, and has created heavenly figures flying over them, observing what they do. And when they have observed them, they soon fly up again to the stars, and tell it to the Supreme Being, how the people below perform on the earth. These people are therefore also very happy when they see a lot of birds flying around, for they conclude that God is very interested in them when he presents them with a great many observers. They consequently have little regard for the non-flying birds like turkeys, of which there are many, as well as great many other poultry, so they eat them, but always raw, for it is the rule that the poultry must be raw. The meat of the tame four-footed animals merely salted and dried in the air. The fish must be boiled, and the earthworms, as there are all sorts of snakes, lizards, and crocodiles, fried in the fire. But fruits must be enjoyed as they grow, when they are ripe. But the best fruit of all is the coconut, which gives them everything: drink, butter, and some kind of bread. These people rarely have houses or huts, and if they have anything like that, they still have it almost in the way the primitive people have had. Dense groups of trees are encircled with a kind of living fence, and an entrance is left on only one side. Such a living tree group is usually the house of an entire family, often very numerous. In the interior, everything is entirely shaded, but it looks like an impenetrable thicket, so that it would not be easy to get into such a house anywhere else than through the usual entrance gate, which leads into the actual dwelling with the most curvatures possible. Such a door, or better said an alley, is not infrequently an hour long, and is a true maze, which a stranger does not easily pass through without losing his way at least 100 times. This entrance, however, is so cunningly made that one of a foreign nation or wild beasts cannot find it and attack it at night. Along this winding paths, for the sake of greater safety, are not infrequently 2 klafter deep pits, usually as wide as the path itself, about 3 to 4 feet, and 1.5 klafter long. These burrows are covered in daytime, but at night they are uncovered again, and this is a good protection for their house. For not even a mouse can pass through the undergrowth, which has grown so densely together that one cannot easily put a finger through it, let alone any other animal or man, especially in old dwellings, where the living fence garden surrounds the dense old tree group at a distance of 300 to 400 klafter. The most terrible thing for them is when a tree of their living house begins to wear out due to old age. Everything is done to revive such a tree, but if all is of no use, it will be carefully removed from above, as a house among you, from branch to branch and down to the root. The old tree is completely removed. Then fire is made on its trunk, and the whole tree is slowly burned. This incineration process often lasts several days long, and when the ground has cooled down, a different tree is planted and nurtured in its place, so that it can replace its predecessor as soon as possible. It is, however, very unfortunate that these people, when, especially in the present time, Frequently, greedy Europeans come to their beloved dwellings and ignite them from outside, which of course force the poor inhabitants to leave their dwellings if possible, but in most cases they are suffocated by the dense smoke. These actions of the Europeans also fills these poor innocent people with an indelible revulsion against clothed people. There are similar original tribes now only in mid-South Australia. For the east, the north and the west are for the most part under English and Dutch rule. In some northern regions, however, there are indeed some tolerated primordial tribes, which, however, differ from the actual ones in that they have a kind of royal leader, and they have a constitution quite similar to that of the Borneans. These chiefs also have a kind of military, which still has the usual bows for weapons. They also have a very keen sense of smell, by means of which such an Australian warrior smells an enemy an hour away. The sense of smell is indeed very acute among the native inhabitants of this part of the world, but they make less use of it than the conquered tribes of the north of this continent. Religion in the northern countries is already more Chinese, although sometimes also primordial Australian. Therefore, they are not so easily moved to Christianity in the spirit world as the original inhabitants of this part of the world. A greater degree of culture is present in the case of the northern inhabitants, though, than in the very simple southern inhabitants, who, apart from a kind of pickaxe and a kind of carving knife, do not know any other agricultural implements. But they are masters in the weaving of all sorts of wattle grass, roots, and a kind of cotton, but these are only used to decorate their dwellings. Otherwise they are mostly naked, and they sometimes tattoo their skin instead of clothing. But this is not the case with all of them. The fact that these simple, innocent, exceedingly good-natured people in the spirit world can very easily be introduced to Christianity has already been mentioned, and it is not necessary either, because it fares much better with such a man on the other side than with a stupid, imagined sectarian. But we need to know nothing more about this people, because everything else is only for statistics, but not for our spiritual view of the people. Therefore we shall move over to another tribe.